Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all very well and welcome to Workplace Opportunity Week. This is a series of 21 events over 6 days, finishing on Saturday, the 14th of November, and you're currently on the penultimate At a Glance session. My name is Sophie and I'm an Enterprise Coordinator for Salford and Manchester at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. Workplace Opportunity Week is part of the wider Meet Your Future campaign. The Meet Your Future Work Shadowing campaign was launched by the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, in April 2019. Meet Your Future offers experiences of the workplace and encounters with employers to young people across Greater Manchester in a variety of different business environments to help young people learn about different roles and careers and gain first-hand experience of the world of work. So thank you for attending this At a Glance session, which is covering the business, professional and financial services sector, and we'll be having a deeper dive as well at HR. So without further ado, I'm going to start introducing you to the two people that are going to be taking this session today, which is Amy and Rachel, and they both come from M&S. So this event is an At a Glance session, and there's no actual opportunity for questions and answers at the end because it's only quite short. But if you have got burning questions, please do pop them in the chat and I can make sure that these are answered after the session. So Amy, you're going to start us off, so please can you unmute yourself and kick us off, please?
Morning. As Sophie said, my name's Amy and I work for Marks & Spencer's HR team, which is based in Salford Quays. So I'm here today to talk to you about the business, professional and financial services sector, but with a specific focus on HR. If you can move on to the next slide, please. So what we're going to cover today, obviously the time is quite short, but we're going to have a short overview of the sector. A bit of a deeper dive into what is HR, what job roles are available, what does the future of HR look like, some different career pathways and some tips for entering the world of work. Next slide, please. So the business, financial and professional services sector covers a wide different range of job roles that support businesses to run and grow. So some of the different job roles may include sort of accountancy, paralegal, legal services, marketing, finance, and as I said earlier, HR, which is what we'll focus on today. HR and recruitment only account for 1% of the UK workforce. However, they're pivotal to any organisation with roles available in the public, private and voluntary sectors. The different size of an organisation will determine the structure. So some companies are solely kind of focused on providing those services, whereas others, such as Marks & Spencer's, have the functions built into their overall structure. Next slide, please, and I'll hand over to Rachel.
Morning, everyone. My name's Rachel Lowe. I'm a People Policy Manager at Marks & Spencer's, so welcome to our session. So I'm just going to take you through what is HR. So HR stands for Human Resources. And this is a function within an organisation for all things that are worker related, and it's often referred to as the people profession. HR would provide support throughout the full colleague life cycle from hire to retire, and I'll talk you through that in a second. We would provide support throughout the full colleague life cycle, so things like recruitment, so where you start in an organisation, we could be responsible for recruiting you, interviewing and selecting candidates, policies and procedures, how we pay you, what hours you work, so wage and hours, how we train you and develop you through that life cycle. And the next one, discipline, that sounds awfully severe, but the likelihood is it's around sort of conduct. So what are our expectations around behaviour in an organisation? Basically what you can and can't do. And then, you know, levers, so separating. So, you know, if you want a career, you know, you're not necessarily going to stay in an organisation for all your working life. So we would also support individuals leaving the business. So that's what we would call a colleague sort of life cycle, employee life cycle. And HR would support in each different area. Now it could be for the likes of Marks & Spencer's, we're a very large organisation. We have sort of over 80,000 employees working for us. HR has all these different functions. So we have a separate recruitment function. We have a separate area called employment policy that looks just after policies and procedures. We have a separate payroll department who would be responsible for paying all our 80,000 employees. We have a separate sort of training area, which is called Learning and Development, or L&D for short. Discipline, we have a separate, and this is where Amy and I work in, is line manager advisory or colleague services. So we support line managers with anything to do with our disciplinary policy, our grievance policy. So if a colleague or employee's got a problem with a manager or doesn't feel happy in the workplace, then we would support line managers and colleagues through those processes. So that's a separate department as well. And then we also have a separate area in our colleague service function to support leavers. So processing leavers, we do exit interviews, find out how people are feeling when they're leaving M&S, and we use that data to try and improve things for our employees. So that's really a snapshot of our sort of where we fit in. If you've got a smaller organisation, you may not have those small separate departments. You may have an HR manager who actually does a bit of everything. You may have a separate payroll department, but an HR manager may get involved in recruitment, interviewing, development of policy, training, supporting line managers through policies, so discipline, grievance, performance, and also, you know, leaving the business as well. So it really depends on the size of the organisation as to the type of role in HR, and Amy will talk about some example roles when I think I am actually. Would you mind moving on to the next slide, Sophie? So the types of roles and opportunities within HR. So if you're going to sort of start, and HR is probably a function that actually it's best to sort of start at the bottom and work your way up to gain that experience. It's a difficult sort of area of an organisation to sort of learn all the theory and then go in at the top. It's a career, I think, where you have to build and, you know, build on that experience. So the roles starting in HR would be an HR assistant or an HR administrator, and that could be in a large organisation working around in your recruitment. So I started my HR career on a temporary 6-month contract, recruiting for a specific retailer for a specific store, and then I was offered an opportunity to stay in the business and worked my way up. So the next stage would be an HR officer, and you could be responsible for recruitment, you could be responsible for training, sickness and absence tracking, disciplinary, grievance procedures and things like that. So again, as I said, it depends on the size of the organisation to what you would be doing. There could be roles as recruitment coordinating, so, you know, from actually putting an advert in a, you know, social media site or a journal, or you know, advertising the role, and then analysing the applications, shortlisting the applications, arranging the interviews, you know, if there's any testing process in that recruitment process. So there could be a recruitment coordinator. There could be in a large organisation a separate training officer. So that would be someone who is just supporting on the learning and development sort of area of employees. So looking at what the training requirements are, supporting in that process. They could be designing training programmes and actually delivering those programmes as well. And then there's an HR manager. So again, that's a step up, and that's a more strategic role. So that's looking at an overall, rather than actual operational doing the do, as we would say, it's more looking at the vision of the company. Where do we want to go to? So that could be looking at processes and policies. It could be looking at sort of what are the overall needs, and we'll talk about sort of the challenges that HR are facing a little bit later on. It could be looking at salary reviews, any kind of employment law, so legislation that could be impacting the business. So you know, what's coming on the horizon. And then sort of the top role, the one that we're all probably aspiring to, is an HR director, and that would be managing and controlling the whole area of the HR function, and also, you know, the expenditure, the budget in that function as well. So those are just some of the types, and there's lots of, you know, different ones within that, but they're probably the key sort of stepping stones within the HR function. If you could move on, please, Sophie. So what does the future look like? So as we've all, we're well and truly in coronavirus at the moment, and that has absolutely changed the world of work. You know, for example, Amy and I are currently working at home, and we wouldn't normally, we'd be in an office. So we've had to adapt and move really, really quickly and really be very reactive. We haven't been able to be strategic in the world of coronavirus. It's very reactive. We've obviously, you've heard the word furlough. No one knew what furlough was at the beginning of March, but clearly now we've all had to adapt to furlough. So people are being paid to you know, stay at home because we just haven't got the demand, but it's protecting those jobs. So we've had to, as an HR function, really look at that and put that into place. Things that are coming up the end of this year, you've all heard of Brexit. So really that's about looking at our talent and skills shortages. So we won't have the workers coming in from Europe, and what are we going to do as a business to try and make sure we haven't got any skills gaps for our businesses. You will have all heard the Black Lives Matter movement, and this has really encouraged the businesses to review and improve their sort of diversity and inclusion agendas. So that's looking at our, you know, values, cultures, policies, everything that links into the Black Lives Matters. Wellbeing is a massive focus in HR at the moment, and a lot of businesses are really looking at, you know, our wellbeing strategy. There's such a rise in mental health cases, and we need to be really supportive with our employees and be proactive in how we support these individuals in their mental health. Technology is something to look at, you know, streaming a lot of manual processes in HR. How do we really, you know, get the most out of our systems, move with the times, you know, very much self-serve for employees using apps. How do we use Teams to communicate like we're doing today? So really moving with the technology. I mentioned remote working, which obviously we've all had to adapt to. The rise in working age has changed the retirement agenda, so, you know, supporting our older colleagues. And, you know, there's lots of other things, but I suppose they're the key things that we're looking at that are coming up for the future in HR. You could move on, Sophie. Thank you.
Just let you know, we've got about 1 more minute left, Amy.
Lovely, I'll whiz through this then. So as Rachel said, there are a number of different career pathways within HR, including your entry-level HR admin roles. And a lot of people tend to sort of study their professional qualifications alongside sort of working. That's something I've done myself recently. So there is the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. It's known as the CIPD for short, and they do different levels of qualifications at level 3, 5 and 7. There are also HR management degrees. Lots of companies offer different graduate programs. M&S do offer a really good grad scheme as well as apprenticeships within HR, and also work experience and voluntary work is always really worthwhile looking into. If you want to just move on to the next slide, please. That leads quite nicely onto some tips for entering the world of work. So your work experience and volunteering really help you to stand out. It really demonstrates a passion for that field, and it's definitely something that's worthwhile looking into. And I know that St John's Ambulance do actually take on HR volunteers, so that is something that you're interested in. It's well worth having a look at their offer. And I suppose the key tips really are know your strengths and really maximise on those. Have a really standout CV. That's your sort of initial opportunity to sell yourself. And my top tips would be tailor it to the job advert. So use some of the keywords in the job advert into your CV, and just make sure you proofread it for any grammatical or spelling errors. It's quite basic stuff, but well worth remembering. And then in terms of interview prep, Make sure that you research the company and the job role. Loads of companies now obviously advertise on their social media pages, and a lot of their adverts are sort of focused on their core values and business sort of vision. Even just using sites like Google, or there are business review sites such as Glassdoor as well. And some of the key things to look into are sort of what do they stand for, what are their core values. Often interviews will be centred around their values, so it's well worth remembering. How many employees do they have? Have a really good review of the job advert and prepare some potential questions and answers around that as well. And don't forget to prepare questions to ask the interviewer as well. And that can just be simple things, sort of what would my training plan look like, something along those lines. I appreciate that was probably a little bit rushed, but wanted to just make sure we got it in there with the time. So if you do have any questions, send them through on the chat, as Sophie said, and we'll get back to you. Thank you.
Great, that's fantastic. Thank you so much to Amy and Rachel for doing that. We have had a couple of questions come through, so what I will do is just make sure that Amy and Rachel get those, answer them for you, and I'll make sure that everyone that's kind of been on this session today will get the answers to them. So thank you so much for sharing all of that insight about particularly HR. I know that I definitely learned something today, and thank you for all the attendees to come in. And just to remind you that you can keep up to date with Workplace Opportunity Week at gmax.co.uk, and of course we have got other sessions that are still happening this week, which I've just popped on the screen now. So if you've still got a little bit of time today and tomorrow and even Saturday, please do make sure that you have a look at what is left for this week. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.